Hey guys, it's Sean from Ridesharing101.com. The website is up and running. Please check it out. We've got the Facebook page. We've got videos. There's merchandise for sale. There's the ebook, t-shirts, rideshare stories. It's a great resource. See what you think. Jumping into the podcast. This is the podcast for Sunday the 15th. Sorry we're a day late in posting. It was a busy weekend. A lot of ride-sharing happening. So, anyway, let's jump into things. Last Wednesday, The Verge reported that you can now use Venmo to pay for your rideshares. Venmo is owned by PayPal, which you can also use. And Venmo evidently allows friends to split the rideshare bill. Because, taking an Uber X over a taxi isn't already cheap enough. This is basically just, I think, an ad for Venmo. In one way, it is nice that friends can split the bill. But really, why? If you're dirt poor, can't your friend just cover you? I mean, after all, you're not going to give your friend a ride because he doesn't have $5 to pay his share for the Uber or Lyft? Sorry, buddy, but you're going to have to walk. Hey, it is good to know that there's another option that makes it easier for people to ride share, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm not sure how big of a deal this is. I don't know who would use this, but then again, I hope my friends aren't that cheap that they couldn't just cover my share of the ride. But hey, you never know. And let's see, on Thursday, there is a Recode article by Sunil Paul, which explains with the recent acquisition of Lime scooters that Uber is well on its way to capitalizing the scooter market. This is an interesting article because Sunil Paul was one of the co-founders of Sidecar, which was one of the first rideshare companies, a rideshare pioneer. And it's interesting to get his take. I believe Rideshare, they sold the app or the use of the app to General Motors. General Motors is doing some rideshare stuff, but they're very behind the scenes. So don't be surprised if sometime in the future they come out with something or do something rideshare related. They're very quiet players, but I think they're pretty smart. The question about this article that I have to ask is there really a need for electric scooters? Is the demand that huge? Because there are really only two places to ride them. You can ride them on the sidewalk or the street. The sidewalk is too dangerous, and in most places it's illegal. And in the street, you're competing against cars, pedestrians, bicyclists, electric bikes, motorcyclists. So is the demand really that high? I personally have no desire to ride one. The only people I know who ride scooters are kids, and they ride the ones that you push with your feet because they weren't motorized, and there's no way parents would let their kids cruise around the neighborhood on something with a motor like that. So, the cost of the scooters, the electric scooters, may be relatively cheap. So there could be, potential for profit, even if it's limited. So that might be enough to justify a startup cost. But it's something that's not for me, and I'm not sure if it's going to take off. But, we'll see. Friday, there was an article from Quartz Africa, and this possibly could have come from Reuters. And in Kenya, they had a 9-day strike over wages. All the rideshare drivers went on strike for 9 days. Evidently, fares have been slashed, and along with them, driver pay has also been slashed. Ubers in Kenya, Taxify, there's quite a few others. It's also, the thing that I found interesting is, one, that all the workers got together to strike. But the article also mentioned that Uber has pulled out of Morocco and it's fighting a court battle in Egypt. SoftBank is a very large investor in Uber, and it has encouraged Uber to concentrate on its core markets, of which Africa is not one. So that's kind of interesting to note. In a different story, according to Fox News, and I had a hard time loading this site, so at first I thought it might be a fake news story, but I did find it verified in the Miami Herald. Evidently, an Uber driver refused to drive some GOP interns because they had MAGA hats. And that's MAGA, MAGA, not maggot. Okay? MAGA hats. Make America Great Again. The driver asked the interns if they were pro-Trump, and when they answered yes, he told them he couldn't do the ride. So he said that he wouldn't give them a ride. And I think this is stupid. I mean, I'm left-leaning politically, and technically we are independent contractors, and we should have the right to take the fares that we want, but you can't discriminate. What are you going to do? Are you going to start asking people their political affiliations? You're going to start asking them religious affiliations? Carnivore, vegetarian, vegan. I think it's a little silly. And my take on it is, if it grates you that much, wouldn't you want to take their money? I mean, wouldn't you want their money supporting you as opposed to the other way around? I mean, think about that. If you don't like somebody, take their money. That's about as capitalistic as it gets. But evidently the driver didn't share the same sentiment. So, in another story, CNN Tech reports on Uber Europe, and Uber has received a 15-month extension on its license in London. And this is relatively old news, but Frederick Eriksson from the European Centre for International Political Economy notes that Uber's clashed with regulators before, and it's probably going to continue, because Uber has argued that it's a tech platform that connects drivers and riders, and he's saying it should be regulated like a transportation company. One thing that I read in the article that I didn't realize is that Uber's had issues with regulators in Denmark, France, Spain, and Germany. And I think the reason why is, I've mentioned this before, Uber's business model seems to be, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And when this is your business model, that might work well in the beginning, but as people catch on, they're going to feel that you've taken advantage of them. And they're not going to like that. And they're going to retaliate in some way. They're going to stand up for themselves. And I think you're starting to see this. You're seeing this in London with only a 15-month extension. Mentioned that Uber is having issues in Morocco and Egypt, and then, in the north of Africa, and now Denmark, France, Spain, and Germany. That's a lot of territory. So obviously, Uber is failing to do the right thing. And the world is starting to hold them accountable. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. And in yet another Uber executive gone screwy story, Barney Hartford, Chief Operating Officer, is getting flack from a conference call that he was on, where he was commenting on a potential Uber ad. And evidently he wondered if an interracial couple would be confusing to potential viewers, as they may not be able to relate to the situation. And I guess he also confused two different black women who had similar hairstyles. He later told colleagues he regretted his phrasing, but many found his comments insensitive on race. And many people have said it's a pattern on how he talked about minorities and women. Complaints were filed, and this is possibly why Leanne Hornsey resigned last week from her HR position. Anyway, Mr. Hartford is said to appreciate the feedback, yada, 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 etc., etc. This just highlights, you would think that with all that has happened to Uber, they would be a little more sensitive to minority and women issues, but evidently it hasn't taken hold across the entire company. We'll see what happens, because I'm sure there's going to be some follow-up to this. Just two more stories. Gizmodo has reported that Uber is now conducting more constant background checks on its drivers. So as soon as they are charged with a crime, if they are, Uber will know and they can act accordingly. I guess this was first reported by Axios. And every year, Uber will perform a background check. And I already thought they were doing this. So I'm kind of surprised that they've been this slow on the uptake. But evidently, they're working with a company called Checkr. And that's Checkr. It's the techie spelling. And since this is a podcast, you couldn't see me make the air quotes over techie spelling. I don't know why they didn't include the E. I think this is just, I don't know, I see Checkr and I'm like, oh, that's really cute. Not. Sorry, I'm always amused by, quote unquote techie humor. So, again, the IPO is coming next year. This is something that Uber's doing to try and make themselves, I think, look a little more professional, so the stock, won't tank immediately after it's issued. Which, we'll see. The last story, Uber rival Get is said to be mulling over the sale of Juno, which it paid $200 million for in 2017. Get operates primarily, I think, in Europe and Eastern Europe. I could be wrong on that, but they are in over 100 cities. And this story is according to Bloomberg. Get is said to be thinking about selling the company due to rising costs. However, one person with direct knowledge of the company said that Juno did make a profit the first quarter of 2018 and claims that Juno will be fully profitable in the first quarter of 2019. So I've got to ask the question, why sell then if it's making money? Now, maybe this was just an investment with the idea that get in, get out, make a good chunk of change, and then move on. I'd like to play devil's advocate. If the software works, if you can make money in New York, why not other places in the country? This could be a prime candidate to sell to Didi Chuxing, which is basically the Uber of China, except for, it basically drove Uber out of China. Uber had to merge with them. So this will be really, really interesting. I'd really like to follow this. Juno was supposed to come along and be the big player and expand and take Uber on. It's sold to Get, and now Get's turning around and selling it, or possibly selling it. So I'd like to see what happens. This is one to watch, because if they can make a profit in a year and a half, it makes you wonder, what the hell is Uber doing? You know what I mean? This company came in. I know they're just in one market, but they're in a huge market. They took Uber on, and they're making a profit? Very, very interesting. All right, guys. The podcasts are every Sunday and Wednesday. I'll be back in a few days with another one. Take care. Thanks for listening.